Hello everybody, I'm joined today with Joe Iema, our head property manager. I'm Matt Morley from Doyle, Spillane. My business partner is here to answer a couple of questions pertaining to selling your property with a tenant. Joe manages approximately 1,400 properties on the Northern Beaches, so he's an expert to answer such questions. Joe, if you are selling a property on the Northern Beaches or anywhere in New South Wales, and it does have a tenant in the property, what are the things that owners, solicitors and agents need to consider?
Yeah, thanks Matt. Yes, obviously it's coming up a little bit at the moment with investors sort of wanting to sell their properties
options.
or looking at options.
Yep.
So the big thing we're noticing at the moment is that people don't know whether they can sell it with a tenant in there, and yes, definitely the property can be sold if there's a tenant living there. That's not a problem. Obviously, depending on whether they're on a fixed term agreement, which means they've still got a period to run on that lease, or they're on a periodic agreement, which means the fixed term has expired and they're just continuing on a month-to-month basis.
Okay, so if there is a tenant in a property, we're in August now and the lease doesn't expire till December this year, it's on a fixed term lease. Tell us what the owner would need to do if they were considering selling it from a legislation and legal perspective.
Definitely. So the first thing we need to do is notify the tenants, and we need to serve an intention to sell notice, and that gives the tenant 14 days notice, because one of the important things there is that if the tenant wasn't notified at the start of their tenancy or prior to signing that original lease agreement that the property was going to be sold, and we serve them with an intention to sell, they can potentially give 14 days notice and vacate the property with no penalty, regardless how long the lease has got to go, because they weren't advised that the property would be sold.
That makes sense.
So if they decide to sell, then basically that 14 days is just to give them time to adjust, move stuff if they need to. If there's people going through, they don't want people to see certain stuff, they can move it around. Generally photography is done in that time, and before the property comes on the market. So, but at that point, they've got a decision to make whether they want to stay there or they don't. So that's the first thing, intention to sell. Secondly, obviously the contract is being prepared by the landlord's solicitor, and this is very important, and where we've seen a few sort of different scenarios play out over the last few months. So if there's a tenant that has a fixed term agreement, that contract should have subject to tenancy and include the lease agreement in the contract.
So the buyer's actually buying the property with the tenant, knowing that they're buying a property with a fixed term agreement with that tenant at that rent up until December, even though it's August.
Correct, and the tenant is protected by their lease agreement. So even if the owner buys it and wants to move in, and the tenant does not have to move until the end of their fixed term sort of thing. So, I mean, there's obviously negotiations going on sometimes, and the tenant might decide to move, or they get an incentive to move. There's lots of things that play out, but generally the tenant is protected by their lease agreement.
That's right.
Obviously, if it's on a periodic lease agreement.
So a periodic lease agreement, just so for people that don't do this all the time, periodic would mean that the lease has expired, and some people say month to month, or just a rolling lease.
Continuing. At the moment, the terminology they use is periodic, which just means that the fixed term may have been for 12 months, they're now into their 16th, 17th month, but the lease agreement wasn't re-signed. The agreement that they had still pertains, but it's just on a continuing agreement or periodic agreement. So in that situation there, what I would advise the landlord solicitor to do is mark the contract vacant possession.
Okay.
So what that means is that if the buyer, you end up finding a buyer, the property exchanges contracts, and the buyer wants to move into the property, because the tenants are on a continuing agreement, our vendor then gives the tenant 30 days notice to vacate the property.
Makes sense.
Okay, so then 30 days, and then the new buyer settles and the new buyer moves in. Where we've seen a couple of issues come into play is that the contract is being marked subject to tenancy.
Even with a periodic?
Even with a periodic.
Yeah.
But what that means is that when it exchanges and the actual new owner wants to move in, they can't actually serve notice on that tenant until the property is settled and they become the owner, because then we have to give a reason. There has to be a prescribed reason why the tenant needs to vacate.
Yep.
And the prescribed reason would be that the property wants the new owner wants to move in.
So then would you have to give them 90 days notice?
90 days notice.
The 30 wouldn't apply?
Correct, and it has to be 90 days notice, but it can only be done after the property is settled and they're the actual owners, because if the vendor tries to serve that sort of notice,
yes,
then that notice period will run over the settlement day and they won't be the landlord anymore, and the reason that they're giving the tenant notice won't be valid anymore.
So what you're saying is, if it is periodic, you can't give the 30 days notice because the contract has been marked subject to tenancy. Correct. And if it was marked vacant possession, then you could.
Correct, exactly right. And
wow,
we see it's coming unstuck.
Yeah.
And the other thing that people need to be wary of, if they are buying an investment property and they're keeping the tenant on, and I find that it's happening quite a bit at the moment, is that the legislation changed where we can only increase the rent once a year.
Yes.
So sometimes I see sales agents say, oh, the rent is currently this much, but you can increase it to that much when you buy it. You need to be careful, because if the rent has gone up in the past 12 months, you cannot do it until the anniversary of that increase.
Gotcha.
Okay, so and we do it. I mean, everyone does it. Like, these guys are paying this much, but you can get this much. So
and you will be able to get this much. It's just when will you be able to do it, and it would be 12 months after the last rate increase in rent.
Exactly. So basically, what we're saying is, if you're thinking of selling an investment property, speak to your property manager first. The property manager will then speak to the salesperson and just make sure we get all those ducks in a row.
Yep.
So then, and look, even if you mark vacant possession, and the new buyer wants to retain the tenant, then there's negotiations had, and then once the property settles, they go into a new lease agreement with the new owner. I mean, again, it's just, as I said,
it's just making sure you dot the I's and cross the T's, you cover yourself in the event of the worst case scenario, and also understanding what's involved and the legalities of it. Which is really important. So we're very big on sharing all that information. So if you are thinking of selling and you do have a property that's rented out, even if it's not with us, you can give us a call and we can lead you through it step by step, the best way to approach it with the sales agent that you're using, whether it be us or not, with your conveyancer or solicitor, and with your property manager, so that at the end of the transaction, you're protected and everything works more smoothly.
Excellent. Well done, Matt. Thank you.
Well done, Joe. Thank you for that. Appreciate your insights as normal. And if you've got a property to rent ever, this isn't a shout out, it's not an ad, but Joe knows everything about property management. And if he doesn't know it, it's not worth knowing. Thank you.
Thank you.